Namo Buddhaya. Welcome everyone to another video. From today's video, I would like to share some thoughts about going for refuge to these three jewels or three refuges in Buddhism. Now, traditionally, all Buddhists go for refuge to these three gems or three jewels. And in other words, we call them three refuges, right? And it is a traditional way, and most of the time, the traditional Buddhists, they do it as a chanting, right? Whenever they do their prayers, they say, Buddhang saranang gacchami, I go for refuge to the Buddha. Dhammang saranang gacchami, I go for refuge to the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. Sanghang saranang gacchami, I go for refuge to the Sangha, the monastic and the spiritual community. So one can think, okay, it is same like the other religions, you know. You go for refuge, you believe in this Buddha and his teachings and the monastic community. It is same. But if you take a closer look at going for refuge, the process of going for refuge, there's a clear reason. There's a clear reason why we do this, right? And also we have to remember that just because we chanted Buddhang saranang gacchami, or just because we chanted that I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, doesn't mean that you truly go for refuge to the Buddha. Okay? So there's a way to do that. So let's discuss how we should do this. First of all, what are these three jewels? The first jewel or the first refuge in Buddhism is called Buddha. Buddha is the historical Buddha, the greatest teacher who taught the Buddhist teachings to all of us. The greatest teacher who taught the reality of life. So we consider him as the teacher, right? The guiding light of our life. So why we go for refuge to the Buddha? Sometimes some people can say, okay, now you're believing the Buddha as a god. No, it is not the same way, because Buddha wasn't a god, and nor did the Buddha claim himself to be a god, right? So the Buddha was a simple human like all of us who achieved something beyond that an average human could achieve, the liberation. So why we go for refuge to the Buddha? It is because he's the biggest role model of our life, right? So to have an inspiration from a character, we go for refuge to the Buddha. When we go through the difficult times and hard times in our life, we can always relate to the Buddha's life and say, okay, if Buddha faced such kind of adversities and difficulties, how would Buddha do this, right? So then you can follow the Buddha's life and Buddha's role model. You take the Buddha as the role model and it becomes the biggest inspiration for our life. So that is why we go for refuge to the Buddha, right? So the correct way to go for refuge to the Buddha is to consider the Buddha as the biggest role model of our life, and to learn from his character and to follow his character as well. Okay? Or even though we cannot follow his fullest character, at least we can try some of his amazing qualities in his life. Okay? So that is the first thing and the first reason why we go for refuge to the Buddha, right? And then the Dhamma, that is the second jewel or the second refuge in Buddhism. Dhamma is the Buddha's teachings. Now, why we go for refuge to the Dhamma? It is to consider it as the framework of our spiritual practice. Buddha taught his amazing teachings for 45 years. And these teachings we consider as the Dhamma, right? So these teachings gives us amazing help to live our life and to understand the true meaning behind our life, right? So to provide this framework, provide this path, we go for refuge to the Dhamma. Now, how to truly go for refuge to the Dhamma is to practice it, right? Follow the Buddha's teachings and practice it. And that is the correct way to go for refuge to the Dhamma. Okay? So first we take the role model and we follow his character, and also we follow his teachings, the Buddha's teachings. And third jewel, or the third refuge, is Sangha, the monastic community, the spiritual community, who have achieved the levels of spirituality. Okay? Why we go for refuge to the Sangha, or this monastic community, or the spiritual community, is to give us the support for our spiritual practice. Because we all know we can't do this alone, all alone. We need a community. Everyone needs a community of people to grow. So when we get together and when we get in touch with this spiritual community, we can take advice from them. We can take the experiential advice from them and grow ourselves, right? So as a help, as a support for our spiritual practice, we go for refuge to the Sangha, the monastic community. So this is why we go for refuge. And this is the real reason behind going for refuge to the Triple Gems. So I hope you got some idea about the 3 refuges in Buddhism. So I wish you all, may all of you be healthy, happy, and peaceful. Namo Buddhaya.